This appears to be an expansion of a law that we passed, I don't know, was it in 2021, I think? And we had quite the debate on the Senate floor that I recall, and most of it centered around the disagreement that you and I have about whether or not employees all fit into the same cookie cutter shape and size. And that when you are requiring employers to share information like this, you're making that assumption. And I don't think that that's fair, because every person is an individual, and individuals are measured based on their specific characteristics. And while you may have several people that share a similar job description at a particular place of employment, they may do very different things, and they may do very different things better or worse than their counterparts. And the employer may appreciate the fact that one person may be better dealing with one aspect of the job, and another person might be better dealing with a different aspect. And they may be compensated differently as a result of their experience and their abilities, because they are individuals. And this is an expansion of what I consider to be an already bad policy, because it refuses once again to recognize that people are individual people and should be judged on their individual merit, and should be treated that way. And instead, it likes to carve people up into categories, as is this legislature is so apt to do, describing people as nothing more than their race or gender, and in this case, their job description. So I have some concerns about expanding this policy, especially in the ways that are here. Madam Chairman, would you do me the favor of explaining exactly what is changing from the current law in this bill proposal, rather?
Section 1, I believe, is the definitions, with a change in paragraph 4, where it previously read wage range means the range of wages, and now it's taking out an employer anticipates relying on when setting wages for a position, and may include. That phrase has been taken out, and it will now read means the range of wages for a position set in good faith by reference to any applicable pay scale. That's the first change. Moving to line 50, there's a new paragraph added, paragraph 8. It reads, fail or refuse to disclose in public and internal posting for each job, promotion, transfer, or other employment opportunity, the wage or wage range, and a general description of the benefits, including but not limited to health benefits, retirement benefits, paid days off, and taxable reportable benefits, and other compensation to be offered for such job, promotion, transfer, or other employment opportunity. Nothing in the subsection shall be construed to require an employer to use a public or internal posting to advertise a job, promotion, transfer, or other employment opportunity if such employer uses an alternative method of hiring for such job, promotion, transfer, or other employment. Paragraph 8 becomes paragraph 9, and the first change in that paragraph is to where it previously read wage range, it now says wage or wage range for a position has been removed. Instead, inserted is and a general description of the benefits, including but not limited to health benefits, retirement benefits, paid days off, and tax reportable benefits and other compensation for the job, promotion, transfer of other employment opportunity. Then it goes back to for which the applicant is applying. That's current law. If such, and new language is if such job, promotion, transfer, or other employment opportunity was not posted in a public or internal posting pursuant to subdivision 8 of this subsection. Existing language says upon the earliest of A, the applicant's request, or B, prior to, but the language has been changed in B, previously read prior to or at the time of the applicant is made an offer. It is now changed to prior to any offer or discussion of compensation, or, and then in paragraph previously numbered number 9 is now number 10, It adds well, I'll read it. The new thing in there is that it annually must provide an employee the current wage range. The new language is also a general description of the benefits and other compensation. And then it's taking out upon A, because now it's B, and B provides such employee the current wage range and a general description of the benefits, including but not limited to health benefits, retirement benefits, paid days off, and tax reportable benefits, and other compensation upon the hiring of the employee, or, and there's a number change from 2 to a B, a change in the employee's position with the employer, and then it's deleted, or the employee's first request for a wage range. Or, now there's a new paragraph 11, fails to or refuse to interview, hire, promote, employ, or otherwise retaliate against an applicant for employment or employee for exercising any rights under this section. Subparagraph C. Previously it read nothing in this section. Now it reads, except as provided in subdivisions A to 10, inclusive of subsection B of this section, nothing in this section shall be construed to require any employer or employee to disclose the amount of wages paid to any employee. In paragraph D, there's a change toward the end of that paragraph. An employer who violates subsection B of this section may be found liable for, now it's 1, compensatory damages, and added language is or statutory damages of $1,000 to $10,000, whichever is greater. It adds, it changes the numbers there as a result of that addition. In paragraph F, it says there's new language. The breadth of the wage range provided by an employer for a job, promotion, transfer, or other employment opportunity shall be one factor relevant to the analysis of whether such a wage range has been set in good faith. Paragraph G, the provision of this section, this is new language, section apply to any job, promotion, transfer, or other employment opportunity that will, number 1, be performed in the state, or 2, will be performed remotely outside of the state, but requires the individual performing such job, promotion, transfer, or other employment opportunity to report to a supervisor, office, or other work site in the state. I believe I've covered all the changes.
Thank you for that very detailed explanation to my question. I mean that sincerely, because you made me realize a few things I didn't even realize the first time I went through this bill. The change that you indicated that I believe is on lines 14 and 15 and 16, which takes out the former language that said an employer the wage range means the range of wages an employer anticipates relying on. So in other words, before in this law, the wage range was what the employer had planned on offering as a wage range for a job. And now it's going to be for a position set in good faith by reference to any applicable pay scale previously determined ranges of wages for the position, actual range of wages, and so on. I'm going to ask why for the change, but I think it's quite clear that now we're actually getting at what the pay is for current employees of the job and not what an employer wants to offer for a new position. And I'm curious why we are asking that information, which I think is quite proprietary and really not something that we should be compelling an employer to share, especially when, well, let me just ask that question. Madam Chairman, please explain this change to me. Why are we making that change?
I believe this change requires the employer to identify the range of wages for a position, and it says set in good faith, and I think that that really is so it doesn't require the employer to offer that or pay that amount to the person, but it does require them to say what the wage range is for a position.
Well, thank you. So something in this bill is going to require an employer to pay someone a certain amount? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly the opposite of what I said. I said it does not require the employer. It only requires the employer to be transparent in what they are currently paying.
I understand. I think you misinterpreted my question, though. When my question was really about what we're asking them to provide, not what we're asking them to do, and for what purpose. But leave that as it may. I also notice in lines 50 through 60 and then 61 through 70, the changes here are now requiring much more substantial information. It used to be that the requirement was simply for a wage range that an employer intended to offer for a certain position, which I didn't agree with, but I didn't think was completely unreasonable. But now we are asking them not only to disclose the previous wages for that particular position, but we're also asking them to include a tremendous number of items and information that may or may not be something they are completely aware of or had made a decision on at the time that they are offering the job, because it may, in fact, depend on the applicant. And that includes, it says here, including but not limited to health benefits, retirement benefits, paid days off, tax reportable benefits, and compensation, other compensation. Maybe some of these items would actually be negotiated at the time of employment. Maybe I will say, I will take the job based on the salary range that you had indicated, but I want a bonus after each year of X, Y, Z, and we negotiate those terms. That would be something that could not be foreseen by the employer necessarily, but they might, in a negotiation, agree to it. In line 61, go ahead. Sure.
I don't think anything precludes the negotiation of additional benefits in this bill, and I would say that I believe the intention here is a good one, because I think the intention is to include not just the salary range or the wage, but to also include benefits, because oftentimes in advertising for a position, even if the wages might not be what the employee would be interested in, the prospective employee, but when they see the range of benefits, it might actually encourage people to apply for a job. So I think the intention here was good.
Well, I can appreciate your opinion, but I think it will have the exact opposite effect. I think that it may discourage people from looking for a particular job based on what is indicated for the information about the wage range. And my concern about this bill is not what it's trying to cause to happen. My concern is that this language is actually quite scary to any employer who would look at it, because this entire bill is set up to create a set of circumstances that they can be responsible and liable and punished in significant ways that you laid out in the list of changes in the from the current law, if they fail to live up to the requirements in this language. It's completely littered with landmines based on the fact that this information is not necessarily something that can be determined ahead of time. When an employer hires an employee, even if they refer to them with the same job title, that has nothing to do with the work required by the current or previous employees in the past or what they paid them. And I don't think that that's understood by anyone who would draft a bill like this. The fact of the matter is we are causing changes every day with the policy that comes through this committee. Even changing the minimum wage has changed the notion of what people's salary ranges are and what their job description is. You know, when you used to have 3 employees working for $10 an hour in a particular retail environment, and now the minimum wage has changed that, those jobs don't exist anymore. So the salary range for that job description is irrelevant because the job is gone. You banned the job effectively by creating the minimum wage, and now you have a new job created. And that new job, obviously, because it's going to pay significantly more than the old one, is going to be a different job. So the historical wages and benefits that were involved, I don't think are relevant. And I also would suggest that employers are open to different opportunities and options. An employer might say, you know, I might hire 2 people to handle sales at the office But if I can find one really good person who's willing to work hard, maybe even wants to work more than 6 days a week, I'd be willing to pay them even more. And effectively, we're preventing that activity. And again, I'm only talking about voluntary activity, Madam Chairman. Everything I'm bringing up is all about the fact that the people that we work for as their representatives want to have freedom of choice on their own. They don't need us compelling them or dictating to them what they can and cannot do. And I think that this entire policy is dangerous because what it's going to do is it's going to limit the ability for employers and employees to connect with one another and come up with a fair and reasonable negotiation of terms for employment. Ultimately, who loses in that situation? We all do. But employees will lose in that situation as well because they will not be aware of opportunities, the ability to negotiate, and the potential for terms that are beneficial to both to them and to the employer. We don't need this type of legislation. There's no reason why the government has to be involved in this. Zero reason. There is no compelling reason to suggest that this is needed. You've already established a minimum wage, and presumably by doing so, you have made the argument that it is acceptable to pay anything above that minimum wage. And now this bill says, well, we didn't really mean that. We meant the minimum wage is the minimum wage, but in other cases, we want to be able to hold employers accountable if they start to pay people different wages than other people with the same job title. It's scary stuff. And I can tell you that employers in this state I wish more of them were aware. I think that's the biggest problem we have is because if more people in this state who are operating businesses knew that this stuff was coming, this public hearings would be filled with people up in arms about what is happening. And it's a tremendous detriment to our policy making that people are not sufficiently aware of what's going on. I have a question. On line 61, it says to fail or refuse to provide an applicant for employment all the same information, wage, range, general description of benefits, included but not limiting to everything under the sun, health benefits, retirement benefits, paid days off, tax reportable benefits, other compensation, promotion, transfer, other employment opportunities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Failure to provide that to an applicant now can be an actionable thing. What exactly defines an applicant, Madam Chairman?
I'm assuming that an applicant would be defined by the employer and what they require in order to apply for that job. It can vary from employer to employer, but generally speaking, most employers today have some online application that has to be filled out. Often there are other requirements of information that has to be supplied. And I think an applicant would be someone who had met all the requirements of filing an application.
I noticed that there's nothing in this bill proposal or the current law that actually defines applicant. And I think that the definition that you just provided is actually quite beneficial to employers. I hope that we can include a definition of applicant that means that we're only referring to people that have actually gone through the process of applying for the job in some way, shape, or form. Because it concerns me that an applicant could be almost anything in my mind. That could be someone who simply asks about the job. Hey, I heard you're having a job opening. Now you're going to open up the employer for failing to provide this information to that person. Line 71, I can't even follow the section numbers and letters anymore because there's so many changes. But starting there, it says failure or refusal to annually provide an employee the current wage range. So now an employer's got an additional job to do, as if they're employed by the state of Connecticut. Is the state of Connecticut going to pay employers to provide this information, this work that is they're compelling them to do? Certainly not. But yet that employer is going to have to do a job for the state of Connecticut, and that is compile this data and give it to each employee. And it's going to be offered with the notion that somehow it's relevant. And I don't know that it is. As I described, every employee at every business is different. And they are not cogs in a machine. They are not parts to be fitted in and replaced periodically. They're individuals. And those individuals are going to be different, and their individual responsibilities are going to be different. Even in certain businesses where they have the same title, customer service representative, one person might be in charge of an entirely different aspect of that than another one. One person might only be responsible for dealing with the really difficult portion of the job, and another person handles the day-to-day minor questions that go on. And those people could very rightfully be compensated completely differently. And this entire policy goes to the fact that we're creating a cause of action to hold the employer accountable for misconduct with regard to how much they pay people. That's not how our system works in America. Our system works based on free negotiations and private contracts, not by over-regulation. You said earlier, as a society, we want to regulate this. Madam Chairman, I want to tell you, it's not the society. It's the members of this committee. It is the majority party in the state of Connecticut that wants to regulate this. I don't want to regulate this, and I'm part of the society too. Lines 80 through 82, failure or refuse to interview, hire, promote, employ, or otherwise retaliate against an applicant for employment or employee for exercising any rights under this section. That is quite a trigger. I mean, you were just asking for people to go ahead and hold employers accountable for things that they would do innocently through their normal course of business, that not in an attempt to be detrimental to anyone. And then line 83, it says, except as provided in subdivisions 8 through 10 inclusive, nothing in this section shall be construed to require any employer or employee to disclose the amount of wages paid to any employee. You like that? It's like, well, nothing is required except for where we tell you it's required here in sections 8 and 10. And that's wrong. They are required, and they should not be. I noticed that the penalties have changed also to more significant penalties. Punitive damages included. I know that was in the past law that we passed in 2021 that I felt equally concerned about. And then lines 97 to 100. The breadth of the wage range provided by an employer for a job promotion, transfer, or other employment opportunities shall be one factor relevant to the analysis of whether such wage range has been set in good faith. And that goes back to the change that was made under the definition of wage range earlier. And why is that? It's, of course, that's a way to trap an employer in saying that they misrepresented the wage range for a job. The biggest issue with this is not that it's unworkable, because it is unworkable, and it will not provide accurate information to anyone involved. People looking for a job, current employees concerned about what other employees make in the same building, etc. None of that's going to be accurate, because those people are responsible for their own employment negotiation. The job of the Labor Committee of the Connecticut General Assembly is not to negotiate people's employment for them. I understand that there's quite a few bills on this agenda that seem to be geared exactly towards that. Somehow we are now the collective bargaining agent for every person employed in the state of Connecticut through the actions of this committee. That's not what should be happening. We should be respecting the freedom of our constituents to engage in commerce voluntarily and on their own terms. This bill, as I said, my concern is not just that it's unworkable and it's going to provide misinformation, but it is also another giant flashing neon sign that says, don't open a business in Connecticut, go somewhere else. I don't know how many more bills we're going to have come out of this legislature that are going to further impact the desire of anyone who wants to exercise in commerce and grow our economy and provide opportunity and jobs. The frustrating thing about this committee is that almost every time a bill is presented, it is always presented, well, we're here to help the employees. We're here to make sure the employees are treated fair. No. These bills hurt employees because they hurt job creation. They hurt the opportunity from being created to begin with by telling businesses, do not do it. I'm sorry for editorializing so much, Madam Chairman, but I am extremely passionate about trying to fix our state. I asked to serve on the Labor Committee because I want to take our state in a different direction where there are more labor opportunities for employees by virtue of more job opportunities by virtue of having more businesses and more activity in the business realm. And this is just the exact opposite of what we should be doing. And I mean, we're on the third item of this agenda, and this is far from the worst bill. This is going to be quite the ride today. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sampson.